Welcome to Africa Live on CGTN with me, Beatrice Marshall, in Nairobi. Donald Trump is being sworn in for a second term as President of the United States. Taking oath just now is the incoming Vice President. Trump's return to the White House comes 4 years after his previous re-election attempt ended in defeat, which he disputed, claiming the election was stolen. The 78-year-old is replacing Democrat Joe Biden following his victory over outgoing Vice President Kamala Harris in the November presidential election. Vice President-elect James David Vance is also taking the oath of office in the ceremony. Trump has said he will repeal multiple executive orders issued by Biden as soon as he takes office. Well, let's go straight to Washington, D.C., where our correspondent Nick Harper is joining us live. Nick, so what's the latest from there?
Yeah, we're just waiting for Donald Trump to be sworn in as the 47th president. Obviously, remember, this will be a return to the White House for him. The last time he had this inauguration ceremony was 8 years ago, back in 2017. We've already heard excerpts of the speech that he'll be giving after he's sworn in, and we're told that he's going to tell Americans that now is a time of a thrilling new era of national success, and he's predicting what he calls a tide of change to be sweeping the country. And that tide may start very quickly after he's sworn in. There is a prediction that he could sign around 100 to 200 executive orders and actions before the day is out. Things like increasing drilling for oil and gas in the US to boost domestic production, things like securing the US-Mexico border and cutting waste in the US government by reducing spending. A whole range of things that we're likely to be seeing and hearing from the president in the coming.
Congratulations, Mr. President.
So, Nick, Donald Trump has been sworn in for a second term as President of the United States. So what happens next?
Well, next we'll be hearing from him. It'll be his inaugural address, a second chance to give that after the one that he gave back in 2017. Then his speech was rather short, just around 16, 17 minutes. But remember, back then he was in the normal position for the inaugural address outside on the steps of the US Capitol. Today, the freezing temperatures have forced him and the rest of the dignitaries inside. So this speech could potentially be much longer. Remember, Donald Trump loves to give long speeches. His rallies are sometimes 1 to 2 hours long. And in that speech, we're likely to hear from him how he intends to change the country. He has said that the Biden administration that has now ended was a failed administration, and there are many things that he and his supporters, the 77 million people who voted for him in November's election, want to see changed in the United States. Real radical change is suggested from the incoming president. The fact that he intends to really lay out these executive actions in such a quick succession on day one shows a kind of shock and awe tactic of being able to show what he wants to do and doing it as quickly as possible. There are many predictions of what the coming weeks will look like, but I think really the next day, the next 24 hours, will show what exactly Donald Trump wants to achieve during his presidency. We are expecting him to sign executive orders after he gives his speech, and then after that he'll be heading to a nearby arena after he has lunch with major congressional members, a sports arena where there will be what is normally the parade that heads from the Capitol building to the White House. That has also been cancelled due to the freezing conditions and moved inside. That parade will take place inside. Donald Trump will also speak at that parade, or a rally as many are referring to it, here in Washington, D.C. And we're expecting him to also sign orders at that rally in front of a crowd of 20,000 of his most ardent supporters. There is already a desk that has been set up on the platform from where he'll be speaking later, an opportunity for him to show to his supporters what he intends to achieve by signing those executive orders very quickly.
Well, Nick, now let's talk about those executive orders. Trump says he will be repealing multiple executive orders issued by outgoing President Joe Biden. Give us an idea of what some of these targeted executive orders might be.
Yeah, some of them surround diversity, equity and inclusion, things that progressive Democrats put in place over the last 4 years under Joe Biden that conservative Republicans want to repeal. But in particular, Donald Trump has promised to ramp up energy production here in the United States. So more drilling for oil and gas. Under President Biden, there was, just in the last couple of weeks, a ban on any new offshore drilling for oil and gas. Donald Trump has said he will reverse that order put in place by Joe Biden within the coming hours. And we're likely to see extra opportunities for him to boost oil and gas production, really to ramp up that domestic productivity. But also he'll be looking to do more targeted action along the US-Mexico border. Immigration was a key theme in the election. It was something that helped to propel Donald Trump to victory. There is a possibility that we could see the largest mass deportation of illegal migrants. That's something that Donald Trump has threatened. There are, in theory, about 11 million living in the United States, and by the end of the day, that deportation program could be underway, along with orders to send US troops to the US-Mexico border to secure it, and to make sure that much of the illegal immigration that Donald Trump lambasted Joe Biden for during his presidency doesn't continue over the next 4 years.
And Nick, what about the general public? What is the general sentiment there? What are some of the expectations as Trump takes office?
Well, there is a real hope amongst Republicans that Donald Trump will be the man, as they see it, to save America. They believe that under President Biden, the last 4 years, the United States, the economy, its world standing has changed dramatically. President Trump, of course, spoke often on the campaign trail about the fact that the United States saw record inflation under President Biden. And of course, that was the case. We've seen inflation drop dramatically from highs of more than 9%. Inflation that really was produced as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic rather than policies that Joe Biden enacted. That inflation has reduced to about 2.7% now. But President Trump is saying and promising that with tax cuts, with extra support for Americans, with a boost to US manufacturing and productivity, he will be able to increase the economy, increase GDP, but also decrease inflation. And I think many Republicans who were voting for him in the November election were looking to him to try and change the economy, to change the cost of living that has increased dramatically in recent years, and to clamp down on things that, quite simply, those Republicans failed, the Democrats failed at under Joe Biden. Things like illegal immigration, things like not ramping up energy production enough. And wastage in Washington is a big buzzword at the moment. Donald Trump has created a new department, a new agency to look at government waste, to try and reduce the amount of government spending here in Washington, D.C. The possibility is, with executive orders in the coming hours, it will be easier for Donald Trump to fire some of those federal government employees and to reduce what he says is significant wastage in the United States Capitol.
Indeed. Nick Harper joining us there from Washington, D.C., where President Donald Trump has been sworn in. Well, let's now cross over to Ovigwe Ogeuge. He's a policy analyst joining us. He's a policy analyst at Development Reimagine. He's joining us live via Zoom from Abuja in Nigeria. Ovigwe, Trump is back. What do you expect are the most immediate actions the world can expect?
Yeah, of course, we know the threat of tariff is something that he will most definitely follow through on. And then the issue of immigration is another key issue that was on always on the campaign trail. He mentioned that several times, and I'll appointed someone who the world expects would follow through on that issue as well. But if you zoom out of the United States more to look at things more generally, then there's a question of the recently signed ceasefire that is currently being implemented. I think Trump would also want to prioritize that the ceasefire holds, and then ensures that at some point that transitions to a proper peace agreement. Then maybe kickstart a dialogue with the Russian side on the question of Ukraine. And then, of course, we heard recently that he may be, or at least he wants to visit China in the first 100 days in office. So these are very interesting things to look out for in the coming weeks and months of his presidency.
So, Ovigwe, in which ways could this second tenure in office be different with regard to how he will treat U.S. relations with Africa?
Well, if we check the record, right, from the first term, there are certain signs that can give us insight into what the second term is going to look like. However, just in December, U.S. lawmakers included a provision in the compromise defense bill for fiscal year 2025 that would require the U.S. president, which would be Trump, to convene a U.S.-Africa summit in 2025 and every 2 years after that. So the U.S.-Africa summit held under Biden didn't hold under Trump, and maybe this time, given that provision, that we'll see that kind of close engagement with the continent, at least at that high-level diplomatic engagement, right? But there will be, of course, several policy issues that you could say you have insight into from the confirmation hearing of his Secretary of State, Marco Rubio. Things about fossil fuel investment being back on the agenda in engagement with Africa. You know, he wants more commercial engagement with West Africa in particular, and all of that, yeah.
All right. Well, Donald Trump is now speaking. Let's listen in.
Is now witnessing in the United States of America. As we gather today, our government confronts a crisis of trust. For many years, a radical and corrupt establishment has extracted power and wealth from our citizens while the pillars of our society lay broken and seemingly in complete disrepair. We now have a government that cannot manage even a simple crisis at home, while at the same time stumbling into a continuing catalog of catastrophic events abroad. It fails to protect our magnificent, law-abiding American citizens, but provides sanctuary and protection for dangerous criminals, many from prisons and mental institutions that have illegally entered our country from all over the world. We have a government that has given unlimited funding to the defense of foreign borders, but refuses to defend American borders or, more importantly, its own people. Our country can no longer deliver basic services in times of emergency, as recently shown by the wonderful people of North Carolina, been treated so badly.